Come on. Oh, there it goes. Ha. Very well. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Thank you all so much for having us here. We're getting ready to get started here, but my wife's just handling our 7-month-old son who's teething, so life is terrible if you ask him. If you're a parent, I'm sure you're aware of that. All right. All right. I think we're ready to get started whenever we're all set back there. And then, one moment, sorry.
Okay. I'll get it a little closer. There.
There you go.
Yes, these are friends of mine, Heather and Nathan Pittman. I've known their parents who were also involved in mission work in Africa for all of their lives, and there were at least another generation or two before them that were also involved in work over there. And I'm trying to think of what else I should say about this. I don't do intros very much.
That's great.
But yeah, so we welcome them here. They're from northern Texas, and that's where they're based here in the States, but they'll be hopefully going back to Africa next month.
Within the next couple months, it just depends on funding and all that. Yeah.
Right. Okay, well, I guess we'll leave it to you then.
Yeah, thank you so much. So yeah, like Jonathan said, my name is Nathan. This is my lovely wife, Heather. We are LCMS confirmed members. Oh, perfect.
Should I be turning this off?
Yep.
All right. Well, let me just blow out your ears to start the presentation off. That's always great. But yeah, as I was saying, we are LCMS members from a little church called St. Paul Lutheran in Denton, Texas. And yeah, so if you can head to the next slide whenever you're ready.
So still further? I
Maybe.
think we're okay. All right. So I am a fourth-generation missionary. My great-grandparents were LCMS missionaries to India. My grandparents were missionaries to Nigeria. My parents were missionaries to Nigeria. I grew up in Nigeria as a missionary kid. And then Nathan and I headed back out to Nigeria for 1 year, and now we're in transition to Kenya. So yeah, Africa is home for me, and so a lot of people ask questions like just how we're so adventurous to go out there. Well, it's home for me. It's what I'm comfortable with, actually, because that's where my childhood was. I was there from age 4 to 17, and my parents were missionary teachers at a school. And when I was in kindergarten, I told my mom that I wanted her job, and I got it a few years ago. So, yeah, we went out to the same school that my parents taught at, and I was blessed to have the exact same position that she had when I was a kid. When I was 17, there was a Nigerian Muslim terrorist group called Boko Haram that was bombing churches and political buildings in our city, and LCMS told us that we had 3 days to get up and leave the only home that I had ever known. So that was one of the most traumatic moments of my life, but we came back right before my senior year of high school, and a month later, I met my husband. So it's just neat looking back at that and seeing how God worked through an awful time in my life.
Testing. There we go. And so, like she was saying, she has this wonderful backstory. She grew up in Africa, was a missionary her entire life. I'm a whole lot more boring compared to that. I grew up in Denton, Texas, just a little bit north of Dallas. My entire life, did all 12 years of public school there. Then I wanted to do 6 years in the Army as a cook before heading off to college. And yeah, that's kind of my entire childhood in about 2 sentences. So if we can hit the next slide, please. So yeah, as Heather said, I had the joy of meeting her about a month after she got back from Nigeria. And so I was immediately fascinated because she came from Nigeria. I met her through a mutual friend, and he walks up and he's like, "Hey, do you want to meet this girl that just got back from Nigeria?" And I was like, "Nigeria?" He's like, "Yeah, in Africa." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And so he introduced us. We started talking. We sat down and talked for like 5 hours the first day we met, and here we are. We've known each other for over 10 years, and we've been married for 5. I know my anniversary, sure. And we have a wonderful son who's 7-month-old. Normally he's very well behaved, but he's teething and didn't want to sleep last night, and so his entire world is falling apart. So apologies if he makes too much noise. If you could hit the next slide, please. There we go. So Heather attended Concordia Seward.
Right after high school, I went to Nebraska and got my degree where my parents and Jonathan went. So that's where they met. That's where I went to college. And I got my degree in music education, K through 12. And I got my Lutheran teacher's diploma. And right after I graduated, we got married on the next slide.
If you could.
And I took my first call as a Lutheran school teacher. So 3 huge things happened in one summer.
If you'd hit the next slide, please.
So I taught in a Lutheran school called Zion Lutheran School in Belleville, Illinois, right across the river from St. Louis. And I taught 2-year-olds through 8th grade music. And we were there for 3 years and absolutely loved it and weren't looking for another place.
Yep. If you'd hit the next slide, please. While she was doing that, I was working for the St. Louis Bread Company and finishing up my degree. Around these parts, it's probably called Panera Bread, if you're at all familiar with it. I started out in the cafe as a manager, and from there, I transitioned into full-time technical support for the entire Panera Bread Company, all 2,500-ish cafes across the United States and Canada. And that was kind of my first foray into the really professional technical IT work. Before that, I had always wanted to be a chef growing up, which, I still love to cook, but as I was leaving the Army, I had messed up my right knee and ankle pretty badly while in service. And so as I was getting out, I sat down with the doctor going over injuries you had, if your VA benefits, anything like that. And he was like, well, given those injuries and the fact that you have a very prominent family history of arthritis, you might want to find something else, because in 20, 30 years, if you're on your feet for 10, 12 hours a day, you probably won't be able to walk. And since my dad taught me to rebuild and fix computers when I was 5 years old, and I'd done it as a hobby and kind of a freelance to earn some money while in college, I decided to move into that full time. So if you'd hit the next slide, please. And so now, this is about the time that we were headed up to go out to Nigeria. As Heather said, she had her mother's job, so she was teaching K through 12 music for the entire school. That includes band, choir, a little bit of orchestra, whenever some kids wanted to play strings, if they were available.
Elementary music.
Yeah, elementary music, and then some more advanced like AP World Music and music history classes like that. And she's far too humble to tell you that she was putting in 12 or 13-hour days at the school because there was just so much to do. And so she was absolutely working like nobody's business. And during that time, I was handling technical support for the school, for other local missionaries, other ministries, as well as for our sending organization. And so whenever you have a missionary IT person, eventually they have to go home on a home assignment, go on furlough to talk to their supporting congregations. And so I'd kind of step in, take over, make sure nothing blew up or burned down while they were away, and just kind of kept all their computer stuff up and running. If you'd hit the next slide, please. And like I said, I was also handling technical support for our entire sending organization, Global Lutheran Outreach, and as part of that, I was making sure our websites were up to date, all of our missionary information was good to go. I was handling all the website maintenance, making sure everything was just working well, and if something broke, I was the Johnny on the spot to fix it. I was also helping the other missionaries in our organization post their newsletters if they weren't quite as technically savvy as I was, so they could keep in contact with their supporting congregations back home. And we were out there from August of 2020 to May of 2021 during the height of COVID, which was great because we got to Nigeria and they were like, all right, you have a 2-week quarantine to make sure you don't have COVID. So we were stuck in our house for 2 weeks. And then we had one day where we could kind of go out to the city, buy some stuff at the stores. And then there was some immediate political unrest. And so we were right back in our house for the next 2 weeks. And so, yeah, it took like a month and a half before we could actually like get out and explore the city and everything. So that was fun. If you'd hit the next slide, please. And that summer when we came back, there were kind of 2 major changes that happened to us. One of them, obviously, is Heather got pregnant and we had our son. If you haven't seen him, he's the cute one. I don't mind if you want to just look at him the whole time. But also, in that same year, I came down with a permanent migraine. It was 24/7, never let up, never abated, and the doctors had no idea what was wrong. So we were only intending to be back in the U.S. for maybe 2 months, maybe 3, visit a few churches, and head back out to Nigeria. But then I got struck with this absolutely debilitating migraine. I was laying in bed with all the blinds closed, with boxes stacked up in front of the window, because even the light that was coming in through the blinds was excruciating for me. Light was making me throw up. Too much noise was making me throw up. Certain other like foods and stimulus were making me throw up. I was absolutely miserable, and so we go to the doctor, and they're like, oh, it looks like it's probably this thing. Here, have a course of medicine, take 2 or 3 weeks. You'll be back out in no time. That didn't quite work. So we went back. They were like, oh, well, here, let's try this other course of medicine. 2, 3 weeks, you'll be back up in no time. That didn't work. And that kind of continued for 16 months straight, to the point where I've had 4 MRIs, 4 or 5 CTs, well over a dozen blood panels, enough other tests and samples that I've legitimately lost count. Absolutely nobody knew what was wrong with me, couldn't tell me, couldn't find a cause. We ruled out all the big ones like cancer, growths, parasites, things like that. And so the best guess that my neurologist had was that it was some sort of damage to or dysfunction of the vagus nerve or the cranial nerve cluster that kind of comes down the back of your head into your brainstem. And it could have been caused by some sort of latent long COVID that I didn't realize I had, because we, of course, got COVID twice while we were out there. Or it could have been caused by the malaria infection I picked up 2 weeks before we came back. Or it could have been caused by the treatment for the malaria infection that I picked up 2 weeks before we came back, because apparently in some cases, certain treatments of malaria can lead to nerve cells attacking, or the sheaths around nerve cells being attacked by your own immune system. And yeah, we had absolutely no idea what's wrong. And so the only reason I'm here in front of you is I finally found a procedure where they implant a generator right here at my chest, and there are wires at the front and back of my skull that essentially deliver very specific electrical pulses into my brain and just overrides the incoming nerve signals. If you've ever used a TINS unit on some sore muscles, it basically feels like that, but like kind of in a ring around my entire head. And so because of both of those big changes and some growing security concerns in Nigeria regarding kidnapping due to economic desperation, we felt it was best to find a different field of the mission to serve in, at least until Jay is old enough to kind of recognize dangerous situations for himself and know how to react to them like we do as adults. Hit the next slide, please. And so we found Rift Valley Academy, and Rift Valley Academy kind of answered 3 massive prayers for us. If you'd hit the next slide, please. The first one is that one of the best hospitals in all of Kenya is basically right next door. This hospital is partially manned and staffed by international missionary doctors and nurses, and it is a training hospital for not only Kenya, but a large part of the African continent. This is where national doctors are brought in to learn the latest and greatest in Western medicine, technology, new procedures, things like that, so they can take those skills back to their home countries across Africa and continue to advance the state of medicine there. If you could hit the next slide, please. And as we said, Heather was working for 12 or 13-hour days, and so
I'll just talk over him. All right. So my position in Nigeria was a K through 12 position, and I loved doing it all, but it left me with no energy at the end of the day, and I didn't want to do that with a baby. So I wanted to make sure I still could give him the best of me. So the position in Kijabe is just an elementary position. So I can work part-time and still focus on raising this little one. Sorry.
The school actually doesn't ask the mothers of preschool and younger age children to work full-time so they can focus on being a mother. And the reason they can do that is because the school doesn't pay us anything. We are fully self-funded, and so that's a huge blessing because it lets her focus on raising our son while also being able to serve in the mission field. You could hit the next slide, please. And as you can tell from my desk at home, I do just a little bit of IT work. And so this is another huge opportunity for me because the school needs a full-time database maintenance and management position, someone to take care of like the student records, the library records, cafeteria records. All those super important pieces of information are stored in separate databases for security reasons, for various reasons, and the teachers obviously don't have time to learn a full coding language so they can go into those databases, get whatever information they may need, and go on with them. So that's where I come in. I build graphical interfaces so the teachers can just click a few buttons, type in a student's name, and boom, there's all the information. I also build some programs called Go-Betweens, which is where I take the APIs from the different coding languages and basically build a program that lets them work together. So you don't have to have 3 separate languages. You can have one program that is able to reach out to all the databases, get the information that's needed, and come back. And so that will be my full-time position in Kenya, in addition to helping our sending agency. If you could hit the next slide, please.
So Rift Valley Academy was started in 1906 by a missionary who was going out to a really remote area of Africa that didn't have a good school available for his kids that would prepare them for college if they wanted to do that. They didn't feel prepared for homeschooling, and so the options that he saw were go back to back to his home country so that they would have good schooling, or go and sacrifice the schooling opportunity for his kids. He didn't like either option, so he asked a missionary missionary coming out to teach his kids. So what started with a one-family household school grew and added more households and in the same position. And by 1950, they finally had their first graduating class. So this was a really new concept, having a boarding school for missionary kids. And 1909, Teddy Roosevelt laid the cornerstone for the main school building. In 1963, a whole bunch more missionaries started going out because Kenya gained its independence. So that's when it started growing a whole lot more. In 1967, RVA became the first school in all of Africa to gain American accreditation, so they can prepare their kids for college.
And if you hit the next slide, thank you. At the time of writing, the school has about 500 students. This is a full-time boarding school, and so the vast majority of these students are in high school, but there are some junior high and elementary kids that board there. The school, the only really restriction on boarding is that the students have to be in at least 4th grade before they can start boarding full-time at the school. And so all the kids that are in kindergarten through 3rd grade are the students of people who live in the nearby town, the students of staff, or students of like the nearby hospital, things like that. The school serves about 35 nationalities across the globe, and the school actually follows a trimester system as opposed to the American semester system. So while the school year is still the same, it's early August approximately to somewhere in June, they actually have a 3-month term followed by a 1-month break, and they do that 3 times over the year. And so that way the students have a set schedule, they know when they're going to be at school and when they're not, and that helps the students actually plan time to go back to live with their families during those term breaks. Or the families are, of course, welcome to visit the school during the actual term year, but most of these parents are missionaries that are in very remote parts of Africa, or they're involved in things that they absolutely have to be on the ground all day, every day, like learning language, Bible translation, these super important things that require their full-time attention. And some of these missionaries are in places of Africa that don't have access to running water, electricity, any sort of cell phone or network service. So the students, they'd have to either be homeschooled or they board full-time at this school. And so that's why the school has maintained itself all the way through to today. If you hit the next slide, please. The school works in conjunction with a much larger interdenominational sending agency called Africa Inland Mission. They help staff the school, they help fund the school, and so the missionaries of this organization come from all walks and denominations of Christian life, and we will be working with them during this. And so the students of these Africa Inland Mission, they get the first priority for application to the school, but that by no means fills up the school. And there are over 70 sending agencies worth of children at this school at the moment. And then depending on space and availability, other expatriate and national Kenyan students are also invited to apply. Hit the next slide, please. The campus itself is spread across 90 acres of a huge escarpment that kind of looks down over a massive valley that runs through the middle of Kenya. And there's a lot of wildlife that you'd see there that's totally exotic for us, like baboons, monkeys, various types of exotic bird life. But for them, it's completely normal because that's just where they've lived. The school also, since it's on the edge of that valley, it's over 7,000 feet above sea level. And so it's pretty high up there. You could hit the next slide, please. Here's a few pictures of just kind of what the school grounds look like. If you look at the top right and top left, you kind of see that sort of tannish, muddy brown. That is probably the most common color for buildings across Africa. Since there's so much poverty across sub-Saharan Africa, a lot of people will build with cheap cement blocks, or like you see here, they'll take a red mud clay brick form it, dry it in the sun, and then they'll stack that up with some mortar that they make with clay that they collect from the quarries or from rivers, things like that. And then they'll plaster over it and paint it. So seeing this sort of red brick building is absolutely everywhere. You'd hit the next slide, please. Since this is a full-time boarding school, absolutely everything the students could possibly need is on campus and maintained by the campus. So all the dorms, staff housing, chapel, a theater hall for theaters, musical performances, things like that, medical facilities, but also like laundry. Absolutely everything that they need is there and provided for the students, just so the students can have the peace of mind of knowing whatever they may need is right there on campus for them. If you'd hit the
Since
next
we're
slide,
all
please.
living right there, we are a much bigger part of the kids' lives than you can be here, because you live all together.
Mhm.
So you eat together, you go to church together. Everything is very interconnected. So the 4th through 6th grade kids that live on campus instead of with their families is what I'm trying to say. They live in what looks like a big household. So it's a smaller number of kids with assigned dorm parents who fulfill the duties that parents would usually fulfill if they were living at home. The 7th through 12th grade kids live in what looks like a college dorm. So it has the hallways full of rooms and shared social areas and eating and stuff.
If you'd hit the next slide, please.
So there are people whose full job is to be a house parent, be a dorm parent. And they help the kids with homework. They make sure instrument practice happens. Sports practice has happened. Sports practice, yes. They support them at these events, and they go to parent-teacher conferences to support them academically. They lead devotions and disciple kids individually. Just all sorts of things that parents would do for their kids.
Mm-hmm. But that being said, all the full-time staff on campus, because this is a full-time boarding school, help out the kids in some way with after-school clubs, activities, hobbies, sports, tutoring, whatever they may need. If there's a group of students that want to pursue some sort of hobby or activity as a club-type setting, then they will find a staff member that can help them with that. And so every single staff member is involved in at least one or two things after school or during the weekends in addition to their full-time jobs. And the students are also able to go up to a staff member and ask them to be their one-on-one direct mentor for academics, social questions, spiritual questions, whatever they might need. Because the kids are assigned a house parent, obviously the school does their best to make sure everybody's comfortable and likes where they are, but you may not click with that house parent in a way that you feel comfortable asking them some more personal questions. And so if the student finds another staff member that they really, really click with, that they really get along with, they will go up to that staff member and ask them to be their direct one-on-one mentor so they can ask those personal questions, so they can have an outlet for those curiosities that they need answered that they may not be comfortable asking in a larger social setting. If you'd hit the next slide, please. So, as we said, this is a school that has an American accreditation, which means a lot of the coursework you'll find there mirrors of the American system fairly closely. You'll have the same balance of core versus elective. You have SAT, ACT, and other college entry testing. But because there are 35 different nationalities, a lot of those kids will go to places in Europe, Southeast Asia, some parts of Canada that may have a slightly different educational requirement than the US schools do. And so in those cases, the school will actually tailor that child's class load to what they need to get admitted into those schools back in their home country or their country of choice of where they'd like to attend college. And because of this, 95% of the graduates of this school go on to attend college, and the school's graduation rate is in the upper 90s, 100% almost every year. And just kind of speaking to the quality of education the school has strived to provide, you have graduates from the school that go on to attend very Ivy League schools like Harvard, Yale, MIT, all these super well-known places, and these kids are coming out of a little school just kind of in the middle of Kenya in Africa, which is, for many, many years, was almost entirely unheard of. If you hit the next slide, please. And just like here in the US, they have a lot of sports that they like to play. They'll play football, or as we call it here, soccer, basketball, volleyball, tennis. They will play some American football, but you'll also see some things like rugby, field hockey, cricket, other sports that aren't super common here. And while there's no official structured school versus school system like you'd have with UIL or other formal intramural sports here, they do play other local schools, other Kenyan teams. There's enough students on the campus that they can sometimes play against each other. And so it's just a good outlet for the physical education.
Yeah, next slide.
Excuse me, I'm choking on my own saliva over here. The school also focuses on the cultural upbringing as well as the others. So you'll see like National Honor Society, Model United Nations, Student Council, a lot of the really like typical high school things, but the school also does offer an interim field mission study, and that's where the kids will go out with some of the staff, spend a day, maybe 2 or 3 days out in the mission field, learning what is needed to be missionaries, how to church plant, how to begin translating the Bible, how to really reach those people that have not had the chance to hear the gospel yet. And so it's just a great opportunity for them to, if they choose to follow in their parents' footsteps and be missionaries, then they already have some hands-on experience of learning what it's like. If you hit the next slide, please. And of course, this is a missionary school. It's focused on the spiritual upbringing of children just as much as their educational. And so there are praise chapels, worship services every week. The students form smaller prayer groups just so they can have a little bit more ability to express themselves in those smaller group settings. The older students will actually take on the younger students as like a big brother, big sister, help them kind of get used to the campus, help them with their spiritual walk, and just so that they have that sort of older kid that's close enough to them that they can still get along with them, that kind of acts as a mentor and a role model for them. The school also does allow the kids, some of the older kids, to lead some music and worship services. And so it's a great way for those students to use their musical talents and skills that God has given them in a way that lets them express their faith themselves. And of course, the staff are right there keeping an eye on things, making sure nothing gets too rowdy or out of hand. But it's just a great way to give those kids a little bit more independence as they get older, lets them express their own faith, and like I said, lead a sort of a praise and worship service. There's a lot of songs, a lot of praise, things like that. It's not a formal church service by any means. The school also focuses on local outreach, both to streets. They have street ministries to help people who are homeless. They have a lot of orphan care. Because this is technically sub-Saharan Africa, the rates of poverty, the rates of violence, and the rates of children who are orphans are much, much higher than you'd see here in the US. And there's also no social safety net. So there's no Social Security, there's no unemployment, Medicare, food stamps, anything like that that helps the members of our society who may not have what they need. That doesn't exist here. And so these types of outreaches are incredibly needed to get these people off the streets and give them a leg up so they can get back on their feet and get themselves taken care of. Because if they don't, there's nobody else that's going to do that for them.
Do I remember correctly that we only have 4 minutes left?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's do the video and then we can answer personal questions.
All right, so let's
If
skip
we
ahead a
have
little
time
bit,
for that.
please. Yep, right there. And so this is a quick video from the school themselves. If you advance the slide one more time, it should play. There it goes.
I'm a student at Rift Valley Academy. My parents are missionaries in Africa.
I am a student at Rift Valley Academy.
I am a student at Rift Valley Academy.
Rift Valley Academy is a boarding school located in the Great Rift Valley of Africa.
I'm a church planter among the Kuria people. I'm sure there's less than 1% evangelical Christians among the Kuria. They've been overlooked. We have 2 kids at RVA, soon to have 3.
As a family, we work amongst the Maasai people. Timothy has a strong missionary attitude. And since he came to RVA, we feel that he has actually grown in his faith. And we can see that when he comes home, because he wants to be out there working with the Maasai and sharing his faith.
I feel that RVA staff are doing an exceptional job at developing our kids spiritually. They not just are caring for our kids, but they love our kids. And they go the extra mile to see them mature and grow even spiritually.
I think the most important part of my job is making sure that I love these kids.
RVA is a community designed for growth. Everything leads to a growing relationship with Jesus Christ.
I am loved.
I'm independent.
I am fun. I have strong relationships.
I have a dynamic worldview.
I have seen the world.
I am responsible.
I am loved.
And I really feel that God is using RVA. To whom much is given, much is required. I feel like God has given me so much here at RVA. In these next couple of years and the rest of my life, God has had so much of me. So I feel like, I mean, this is where it's at. This is probably one of the best places a teenager can live.
A fully accredited American school, RVA has set a high standard of academic excellence.
I'll never forget opening the envelope that the first kid in 100 years has been accepted to Harvard. From that point, we've had 25 or 30 kids be accepted at those schools. But what it's done more than anything is break out the ceiling and have kids know they can go any place God's called them to be.
Within an African context, Rift Valley Academy seeks to disciple, nurture, and educate students towards Christian maturity for the glory of God.
The solid baby
It's still
We are truly humbled by the caliber of staff who give up otherwise very lucrative, comfortable jobs to come out here and teach our kids and love our kids and help raise our kids. We couldn't do our job unless they were here.
We decided to send Laura to RVA. We knew that for her to be able to succeed well as she continued on after high school and to college and further in life, we wanted her to be able to be involved in things like sports and music and academics, where she was being challenged not only by a teacher, a trained teacher, but also by her fellow students.
RVA is teaching them a lot about what it means to be a leader and how to do that amongst your peers.
Because our kids are here at RVA, they have great opportunity for things that they couldn't do at home. The internet and computer, the opportunities they have here. Science labs, my kids love science and biology.
We're so grateful for RVA because we can offer them more.
I will leave here a stronger person.
I will change the world.
I will love.
I will impact my culture.
I will seek the lost.
I will love.
I will never stop growing.
I will lead.
I will follow Christ.
I will love.
The staff have been a really big part of my life. They are just more than teachers. They really get involved in our lives spiritually and emotionally. They inspire me to want to grow in Christ. They've just helped me and nurtured me in my spiritual faith and shown me who God really is. And it's been a blessing just because I've just been surrounded by people who truly love God, and it's just helped me to become the person that I am today.
At a school like RVA, with such a broad scope of activity and opportunity, it takes an army of behind-the-scenes support staff to keep it running smoothly.
This is the place where we pray that each student will grow in Christ and will develop a biblical worldview. We want to equip them academically and socially to glorify God in their future lives.
For RVA, what they say to us over and over again is, we're here for you. We're not called to your ministry. We don't know how you do it, but we're here so that you can do it. They minister to us by loving our kids.
We love the RVA staff, and not just because we know them, but because our kids love them.
I'm a missionary in Africa.
I am a missionary in
We are
Africa.
missionaries in
I'm a
Africa.
missionary in Africa, and we couldn't do our ministry if it wasn't for Rift Valley Academy.
And I couldn't be here if it wasn't for Rift
We
Valley
couldn't do
Academy.
our ministry
We
without
couldn't be here if it wasn't.
I don't know how we would survive out here.
I couldn't be here if it wasn't for Rift Valley Academy.
All right. So normally here we talk a little bit more about the local geography, topology, stuff like that. Just kind of give you a better idea of what daily life sort of looks like there. Since we're running a little bit late, I'll just skip ahead. As we said, the school does not pay us, so we are entirely self-funded, and so we're looking for people who are willing to partner with our mission, people who would partner with us spiritually through prayer and financially. If you would like to partner with us in these ways, you can find all the information you'll need on cards and some other papers in the back there. And of course, so prayers in the first place that our fundraising goes well, prayers that paperwork goes well, all that fun stuff.
We have a newsletter that you can keep up with us on. We have a computer that you can sign up for the email newsletter if you'd like to do that right here.
Or if you'd like to just give us your name and email if you're not super comfortable with technology, we can get you signed up as well. If you would like to donate financially to help us, we can accept cash, checks. We even had somebody at our home church donate stock in our name to get around a taxation gifting law. And so really, whatever you would like to financially support us, we're incredibly grateful for.
The details on how to do that are on the back of our prayer card on the bottom right.
Yep. And so we can accept cash, checks, anything like that. Just to be completely transparent, any money that goes directly to our sending organization, Global Booth and Outreach, they take 10% of to keep our sending agency running. That money doesn't just disappear into the air. It helps with tax accountants because U.S. taxes are incredibly complicated. It helps keep the organization itself up and running so that the logistics they provide for us are there. It also goes to things like an emergency fund. So if a missionary encounters some sort of major medical or family emergency while they're in the field and they don't have the funds ready for that, Global Booth and Outreach will help them with that, get them back home, get them wherever they need to be, and carrying on. And so if you have any questions, of course, we're happy to answer them. But so for now, I guess the best question is, I'd rather not keep you, but if you do have questions, please, I'm happy to answer anything you have. Yes, sir.
Feel free to leave if you want to.
Yeah,
We can just answer personal.
Yeah, if you need to leave for any reason, absolutely. But yeah, if you have any questions, please. Yes, sir. Oh, thank you. Yes, sir. As part of the curriculum there, the students have a Bible study every week, and then from there they move into theology courses, apologetics, things like that. So the Christian education is a big part of the actual education there. Yes, sir.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Sorry. All right, any other questions? Or also we do have some handmade stuff from Kenny in the back there if you'd like to take a look at it on your way out.